Hello and welcome. Yeah. Hello and welcome to the fifth Nagari reruns. I'm Tahir from the Charles Correa Foundation. My colleague Aditya is here with me. And we also have the filmmakers of the film JarJar Ghar, Geetanjali, Prateek, and the mentor Bina. So we started reruns as a way to look back at the films we did in 2020 and try to then connect them to the films we're doing this year, where we're discussing livelihood and the Indian city. Last year, we got 10 brilliant films made on housing adequacy in India. So let's watch JarJar Ghar, a film about dilapidated housing in Bombay and the ways forward. Can we screen the film?
I am 75 years. इधर भी बड़ा हुआ है. ये बिल्डिंग को 200 साल हुआ, 200 साल, 200 ईयर.
और ये पूरा हेरिटेज एरिया लगता है. थिएटर्स आर हियर, Nariman Chopati, all theaters and everything is in the same area. So we are not thinking to going for the summer.
रात को है ना आवाज करता है. ये बैठती है बिल्डिंग, कर कर ऐसा आवाज आता है. हाँ, देता है सुनाई, उठ जाती है, बैठ जाती है और माँ को नमस्कार करती है, माँ बचा लेना.
ये सब इधर का है, ये पूरा घर का है.
पुराने चीज से बहुत बहुत लगाव है. मुझे बहुत पसंद आता है, पुरानी चीज मुझे बहुत पसंद लगती है.
बिल्डिंग का तो हालत आपने देखा होगा, रिपेयरिंग करने की हालत है ही नहीं है बिल्डिंग की. अभी आप यकीन मानो कि हम लोग कैसे रहते होंगे.
अरे बारिश
हम लोग के आगे मजबूरी है, क्या करें.
इधर से गिरा कि इधर से गिरा, ऐसा डर लग जाता है.
जो इधर काम करने वाले थे अभी मजदूर लोग, वो लोग ने बोला कि भाई इधर से हट जाओ, आप भी गिरेगा तो कोई भरोसा है नहीं.
वॉशरूम मध्ये बसायला गेल्यानंतर भीती वाटते की कधी बसेल. छत्री घेऊन बसायला लागतो वॉशरूम मध्ये. हा, पावसामध्ये छत्री घेऊन ऑलमोस्ट बसायला लागतो. पाऊस पडला ना का बसताना भीती वाटते की कधी बसेल, बसता बसता खाली जाऊ काय असं आहे.
ती चालीवाला रात्री बसून काढते, जेव्हा पाऊस येते ना तेव्हा पुसा पुसा, इकडे पुस, तिथे पुस, इथे बालदी ठेव, इथे तोप ठेव, असं. हा, रात्रभर हे सगळे तेच करत असतात. झोप नाही आम्हाला.
एक ही फोटो बचा है, बस ये 2-3. मेरी दादी के फोटो सब खराब हो गए, खराब हो जाते हैं, फिर रहती हैं, कुछ क्या करेंगे.
ते आता आमचं काय 125 रुपये भाडं आहे ना.
123 आहे.
भाड्यामध्ये मला सांगा, आज ह्या एरियामध्ये भाड्यावरती कमीत कमी 15,000 ते 20,000 रुपये भाडं आहे. आज पगार आम्ही किती घेतो? 15,000 रुपये पगार घेतो.
10 साल बाहर रहो, 15 साल बाहर रहो, ऐसा हो जाता है.
ऐसा हो जाता है.
तो ऐसा हम लोग नहीं जाएगा. हम लोग को लिख के मांगता है कि इतना साल में तुम्हारा मकान बना के हम लोग दे देंगे, तभी हम लोग निकलेगा, ऐसा नहीं निकलेगा.
अपने को तो दोनों साइड मरने का, इधर भी मरने का, उधर भी मरने का, ऐसी हालत हो गई है.
म्हणजे सगळ्या बाजूने मरण आमचं होतंय ना, घर मालकाचं होतंय, बिल्डर तर रेडीच आहे घ्यायला. अजून म्हाडामधून प्रोसिजर होईल तेव्हा होईल, घर मालक सोडत नाही, म्हणजे मरतो सगळ्या बाजूने आम्हीच.
झोपडी असली तरी आपली झोपडी आहे ती, असं आहे ना. म्हणजे जरी अशी बिल्डिंग पडायला आले तरी घर आहे ना ते.
एक पर्सन का जिसका शादी हो गया था, हफ्ता नहीं हुआ था, रात को उसको लगा बिल्डिंग गिर गया पर्सन, तो उसने दरवाजा खोला, उसको कुछ दिखा नहीं, तो पहला बाहर पैर निकाला, एक ही लादी था, उसके आगे कुछ नहीं था, पूरा पैसे चाली था ही नहीं। उसने अंधेरे में बाहर पैर भी देखा, क्योंकि उसका साला कुछ दिखता नहीं है, अंदर आ गया, दरवाजा बंद किया, सुबह उठ के खोलता है तो बाहर देखता है तो बाहर पैसे है ही नहीं।
छोड़ना ही नहीं है कोई भी हालत में। अभी मेरे पास 1 रुपया नहीं होगा तो भी मैं ये छोड़ूंगा नहीं, ये घर।
को तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है, हमको इधर से निकालेगा तो हम तो मर जाऊंगा ऐसा लगता है। इधर बहुत अच्छा लगता है।
Thanks everyone for watching the film. If you have any questions, we'd request you to keep your mics off and put them in the chat so that we can take them to the team. Before we get around to questions, Nagari is a unique film competition because it's a guided exercise. We have a panel of mentors who work with the teams, and they work on their film idea together to turn it into a very thoughtful yet short 5 to 7 minute film. So to speak a little bit about the process working with this team, Bina, Paul, would you please share your experience? And then after that, Geetanjali and Prateek, the filmmakers, can also chip in.
Hi, I'm Bina Paul, and it's been a real pleasure to be associated with Nagari last year, working with Geetanjali and Prateek. Basically, our brief was that within a period of time, we wanted to have, just give me 1 minute, sorry. Yeah, so we were sort of, among the mentors group. We looked at all the projects, and I had seen this project, and I was really interested because though one knows that, housing is such a problem in Bombay, and it's always been something that one is completely aware of. But through this project, I saw a different side to the issue of housing, which addressed the, the notion of people being statistics, number one, which is that, oh, there are so many people who are living in these houses, and this is, and also the buildings being a part of a statistic, and never an understanding of how housing is actually also a very emotional thing. It is something, a home, a house, even as in the film we just saw, it's a hut, or it's just a tarpaulin over your head. How much that can mean to you. So this was what really attracted me first to the project, when we were sort of thinking of how we should all work, with whom we should work. Talking with Geetanjali and Prateek, the first step was, of course, to go into research to find out who these people are, why are they there, what is it that keeps them in these spaces, and of course, what is the historic connotation of all this. there are laws, there are tenancy laws, there are so I mean, I think we spent time talking about all this. They went through various processes of research. The other thing was to also make it cinematic. The idea is that you can write an article. This can be a fantastic article in a newspaper. This can be a blog. It can be anything actually. But I sort of thought with Geetanjali and Prateek, I just kept emphasizing that cinema has a quality that other mediums do not have. And it is important for us to explore that in this idea of these houses, etc. So I think we talked a lot about dreams, about visuals with dreamlike qualities, about memories, about how our memories preserved. Is it photographs? Is it, so um, where does, how do people attach themselves to these structures? How does the light fall in these structures? How does decay look? So these were, I think, Geetanjali and Prateek could talk a little more about it. I was very particular that this was the idea of filmmaking, that what they needed, I think they knew enough about the subject, they knew enough about going and meeting the people, etc. But I think they needed to be reminded, and which is what we worked very well together, I think, that, this is a film. What is it? Where is that darkness that he talks about? And where is that darkness? Where is the memory of even little objects? So yeah, so it was really interesting. It was a small film, but I think very nicely both of them captured together. They captured, and it was a difficult time. We were in the middle of the pandemic. People were not so happy. There is that, of course, that lady who didn't even open the door to the house, but she makes such a strong statement. And how that, that different, that kind of that being closed inside became the visual that was so impactful. Yeah, so working in those circumstances was tough, but I think they really managed to get you a sense of what it means to have a house and have a home that is so important to you, where everybody else is thinking, oh, inko bhaga do, kahin do, that it's an old dilapidated house. Dilapidated or not, it's your home. And how can you ever replace that? And what should planners do when they think of these things? I think that is the important thing. When you see this film and you think of relocation, rehabilitation, etc., how do you take into consideration this one emotion also? So I think that was for me also a very important understanding of this issue of housing in an urban setup. So it was a wonderful experience. I think Geetanjali and Prateek could perhaps talk more about it. I also noticed that both of them have also decided that filmmaking is an interesting journey. So that is also nice. I think they're all wanting to explore film further. So it's been a nice. I mean, I think it hasn't stopped with this. With just this film, we are looking to expand it, think of the ideas that have gone into it. Yeah. So perhaps Geetanjali and Prateek would like to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you have said. Firstly, it was actually a pleasure working with Bina ma'am and also the team. It was very compatible, and there was not even there was no pressure. We had a lot of space to experiment with our ideas, explore what we are trying to show in the film. And I think one of the most difficult things for us, even as we figured it out with Bina ma'am, like together, was what we were trying to say through the film. I remember you asked us, both of us, what is your stance? And then I think we took a day to think about it because we were like, okay, I think, yeah, we did not think about this and before. And since then, I have actually always now been looking at filmmaking as a more personal and as a more not as an objective process. It's more of what it means to you and why you're doing it, and placing myself in the story and the process as well. So that was really an important lesson, and it was a challenge because again the issue was so complex. And I'm sure Prateek also agrees that every day we went to the field, every day we went to the spaces and talk to people, a lot of new information came out. And since the issue is so complex, and it's a much more bigger issue than just a housing that's almost going to collapse and people are living in it. So it was difficult to explain the issue also within just 5 minutes. And also we really struggled with what to omit or what to keep, what not to keep in the film. I remember that was also a long conversation, and it was difficult, but then we had to make a choice because you always have that limitation of time and you have to choose, and that becomes the story, I think, what you choose to show. And yeah, so that was one of the things during the process. And it really helped talking to Bina ma'am about the visuals. Like she said, all this, the lighting, the mood, the everything that was really essential to the film. And then we also realized that sound is also an important part of the film, like a very important part, because we all agreed on that. Sound was even now, as we're working on expanding, as ma'am said, that we're working on the feature version of this film. And for even now, we really want to, like, the sound is going to make or add to the essence of the film. Like, we don't want it to be a visual, that apart from the visual information, the sound is going to add to the audience's or viewers experience. And even while making this short film, it was about that. How can we make sound add to the experience of being able to imagine yourself in that space? And that's where Aditya came in. He's not present here. He was supposed to join, but yeah, he was a sound recordist, and he did the sound design. Although it was a very short time, he was literally under so much pressure to do the sound design and then finish. I think he did it in 2 days, and then he sent us a version, and then we gave him feedback, and then he had to redo it, parts of it again, and send us. It was a little rush, yeah, but yeah, the rush was very exciting though, and also overwhelming. I think Prateek can add more about the process.
So the whole idea started with Geetanjali's research, which she did a few years back, I guess, when she was working as a journalist. So that, like, basically, the whole idea is hers. And then when we met and we connected on this idea, so then at the time, we saw Nagari competition is out, and so we decided, okay, let's apply for it and let's see what happens. And we were selected, and so that whole process happened. But the whole idea that originally, because of the Geetanjali's research that she has done, so that helped. Now, from translating that research to a film, that was a task for us. And if ma'am wasn't there, I don't think so it would have been possible, because otherwise you met a lot of challenges while making a film, especially during the edit. And like, there are two brains working, and then there are more feedback from the friends and people and all this. So it's really become difficult also to consolidate such a complex idea into 5 minutes. Now even we are working in a longer version. There's so much that we are also understanding now that that we are going through and the people are going through majorly in that process. So to consolidate everything into 5 minutes, and we were very clear initially that we won't keep any talking heads during the edit. But somehow it didn't work for us, because it was like one of, I think ma'am or someone suggested to me that you have been knowing these people for a while, but we cannot associate with these people unless we see a face speaking in front of the camera. So you have association, but we don't have that association. So that has to come out. Then we again worked on the edit, and then we used to get constant feedback from the ma'am that do this, try that. So that's how the edit evolved. And also good thing was working with this team is that everybody worked independently and together in that sense. Like I was doing my camera, or Aditya was doing his sound. So there was input from Geetanjali, but at the time of shooting or recording, there was no interference. Okay, do this, do that. No, you are free to do whatever, because you understand the subject as Geetanjali or other team member does. So we all were in a very good tandem during the shoot and in the post also. None of us went to home for Diwali. We were still shooting, I guess, on the day of Diwali. So that was also challenging, Then, yeah, so that was very interesting. The edit was, I guess, was the most interesting and time consuming, and time consuming in no sense, but I mean, it's brain, it takes everything from you when you edit film. So that when you also learn, you learn also, that okay, there you have made some mistake that you should have taken, or that camera sound is not working, you should have waited for the sound record is there. So all like all these little things that hamper your editing process and also help you in some sense to form your film.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we both of us tried to edit it together, and then after some time, like at the end of the edit, we just decided that we're not going to edit it together anymore, like to edit anything together, because this is just not happening. This was this was my first documentary at such a level, and I'm sure this is Prateek's first project that was his own also. And while editing, we've learned a lot about ourselves also. And it was a lot of long process with which was really like testing as well. But we learned a lot. I mean, I at least learned a lot, and I have only done one course on documentary filmmaking way back in college, and this short experience taught me a lot more than that one course of over 6 months.
Also, there was an interesting thing of putting that title at the end, because we could have put the title in the beginning. Remember, there was this thing, you can frame it or not frame it. I think that was also a very interesting decision that they made, that it was only in the end of the film that you actually frame the issue, the whole So this, I mean, this for me is part of this whole thing of how do you give people time to think about what the issues that were being raised, without directing them to think in a particular direction. So I think these were some interesting things. Also, about the law, I remember we also had a discussion about what are these laws and how much. Remember, there was this thing about that shot of the sealed house.
The notice.
The notice, yeah. So about how much you should tell people about what these laws are, how much because these kind of films can also be very, straightforward, saying, yeah, this is a law, it was passed in this, and there is a house, and therefore it is being shifted. But this is not the way the film explains itself. I thought that was the important thing in the filmmaking process. Yeah.
Actually, we can start with what Bina was talking about, because for somebody, for people like us who are not so familiar with Bombay's issues, could could maybe Geetanjali or Prateek, one of you all introduce us to the legal context and then also the social context behind such a situation of these decaying buildings, especially when they're in the heart of such a large city like Bombay?
Yeah. So, like Prateek mentioned earlier, this issue came up when I was working as a journalist. And for someone who works as a journalist in Mumbai, or people, who are caught up with news, or like, especially during the monsoon, I mean, Mumbaikars know that there is at least one building collapse that's going to happen this monsoon, which is like an old building. And there are, I think every year, a number of people die in these buildings. And that is the issue that a lot of people in Mumbai know about, like generally, that monsoons time, because heavy rains, and that there is a potential of that happening. But even then, a lot of people don't know the complexity within this thing, because firstly, it's these the oldest buildings. Well, not all of them are under the Pagdi Kirayadar system. The Pagdi Kirayadar system, again, like, is a legal, it's under the Bombay Rent Control Act, and it's a colonial era law, but which was legalized in late 1990s. Like, it was legalized, it was supposed to be abolished, but then since a lot of people opposed it, and especially the owners, and which are the Pagdis, like Pagdi means the owner of the building. There was a lot of opposition, so it was legalized in that sense. And even though a lot of other cities have abolished it, I mean, it's not just in
Would you
Mumbai.
just explain that, Geetanjali? What is this Pagdi Kirayadar? You pay once and you're a tenant for life, kind of, no?
No. So what happens is there's an owner of the building, right? This is a private owner, and then there are people. They lease it out to tenants, but the tenant here now under this system is a part owner. By part, so there's the partial ownership, and they initially buy that partial ownership can be bought with it's also still a very small amount. Like right now it could be around, say, 50,000 to 1 lakh or something like that. So it's still a small amount for South Mumbai, where the rent itself would be like in lakhs. And so they buy it initially, and then they pay a monthly rent of very little, that is between 200 to 500 rupees per month. So that is the nominal rent under the Pagdi system. But it's the partial ownership has already been bought with, again, a small amount initially. So now the tenant, who is the partial owner, can also sublet it or lease it out to someone else. And then the rent which that tenant gets, 35% of it is supposed to go to the original owner, that is the owner of the building. So it's that 65-35 ratio of the ownership. So even if as a tenant, I can sell the house as well, but then 35% of that profit, or that amount that I sell it for, is supposed to go to the owner. And now then the issue here is the owners do whatever they want to do. So they'll harass the tenants, and they'll just say that I want 50% of it instead of 35. So it's not really, the laws and like whatever is written is not all necessarily followed, and tenants are actually harassed. And
Geetanjali, just to clarify, so now these are the owners, or these are the part owners who go after the tenants, and who are the ones who also protested the abolition of the Rent Control Act? Who like who does what role in this very complicated hierarchy?
It was actually opposed by everyone, because it's also beneficial to the tenants, because nominal rate pay, I mean, you're only giving 500, less than 500 rupees a month. You're staying there, and you're staying in the most, I mean, it's a posh area supposedly in South Mumbai, and it's so convenient. It's next to the central railway station of Mumbai, and the terminal station of Mumbai. There's hospitals. I mean, everyone wants to live in South Mumbai, basically in Mumbai, because it is the town, and it was the it's the oldest part of the city, and especially people who have been living there for generations. They don't want to leave, and once this pagdi system goes away, essentially the only like the most the obvious change would be the amount of rent that will go up drastically. Like for 300 to 500 rupees a month, it would be thousands of like 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 rent for just like one room or two room house. And these are one room and two room houses, and they're not like 1 BHK or 2 BHK houses.
They are like around 100 square feet or something. They are not very big houses. They are not very big houses. But the thing is that now they've been living there for so long, and they are so used to the area. The rest of the Mumbai, which is called as suburbs, when people in the suburbs say, it's they don't want to go there. The problem is now that what the owner, actual owner of the building is saying is that nobody is willing to do the repair work for the building. And the tenant, the part owner of the building, they say that it's the owner's job to do the repair. For years, no repair work is happening. The building, any building requires a lot of repair. Now to that repair, to do that repair work, there is Mahara in picture. Mahara, I think the Gandhi can explain. Mahara again plays a certain role in this case because there's a certain amount of MLA fund that comes with Mahara for the repair of this building. But many of the buildings are not getting this fund also. So eventually, over the years, all these buildings are getting deteriorated, dilapidated with time. Gandhi can explain Mahara.
The thing is, like, there's a lot of things, like a lot of aspects of why this is not being solved, and that is what we were trying to also, find answers to after we finished this film, because we kept going back to the spaces, and it's not only, it was so complex that everyone, like all the stakeholders involved, are blaming each other in that sense. But also, it's difficult for, I mean, these are families which are earning, say, 10,000 rupees a month or less. So how are they supposed to pay 30,000 rupees for repairs of the entire building? So one of the buildings that we're shooting in. So one way is to get funds from MHADA, which is the Maharashtra Housing Agency, and the other way is to collect repair funds from all the tenants, all like every tenant from the building. That is what we usually do, right? I mean, every building society, there are maintenance charges, repair charges, that, and if there's any work that needs to be done, you collect it from every tenant. Now, most of these tenants can't afford to give 30,000 rupees, like even as a small amount as 30,000 rupees, which is small for us. But so then now all of them have not given the money. So since then the amount of money that needs to be raised has not been raised, so the work is just stalled. And it's also happened that once many of them did give in 30,000 or some 15,000, 20,000, but no work happened that year because not everyone chipped in. So the money was not enough that was raised, and so they could not go and do the work. And then they're like, so many of them are like, we don't even know where our money went. We gave some, and then nothing happened. So now they're also very reserved about giving this amount of money again. Like last time we gave so much money, nothing happened. So there's no regulation, like the MHADA is not involved enough. And if they are involved, the MHADA is now saying that we don't have enough funds. So those fund that MHADA has also comes from the repair maintenance charges that the tenants are supposed to give. So the charges that the tenants
they'll be subsidized basically. So MHADA no longer has the money to single-handedly repair all the work. So the best MHADA can do is they can subsidize. Yeah, this makes sense now to understand. Advait, you want to?
Actually, no. I mean, yeah. So actually, JarJar Ghar somehow reminds me of this another film called Mohan Joshi Hazir Ho, which is by Syed Mirza. I mean, it basically I think has the tenant point of view, as to what all goes inside it. So I think, I mean, I'm not gonna say more about it because probably some people would want to watch it later. But I think, yeah, I'm getting the context that you're actually getting at. And that brings us to the next question as to what is the point, I mean, what is the position of the owners, I mean, the owners who own these buildings? Like, what is their position about how to go about the building and its reconstruction?
Yeah, so that is the challenge that we're now facing because we contacted two owners. Both of them refused to speak to us. One of them keeps saying, later, later. We're still trying to, connect with some owner, like maybe a smaller one, So one of the owners that we're trying to meet is someone who owns like 20 buildings in South Mumbai. He's one of the biggest land owner, like landlords, or and the oldest because his family is owns so much. But yeah, it's they're trying to. There is some, because there's always some nexus happening between the builder, the owner, and usually these owners don't want to pitch in their own money. They don't want to put in their own money, and sometimes they say that I mean, so from what I've also read from other articles and all of that, and also spoken to people, for them this 300 to 500 rupees a month is too less. I mean, some of them don't have, I mean, earlier they were probably rich enough to actually take care of these buildings, but now they're not, because everything is costlier now, right, than before. Like the repair works, which maybe would have happened in 10,000 rupees earlier, now need 1 lakh, 3 lakh rupees. So they're not able to do that by themselves, and they're not living in these spaces, so they hardly care. And what we've been told is not all of them are nice enough. Like some of them are, at least empathizing with the tenants and being able to, figure it out with them. So it's basically everyone has to come in and make a decision. And even sometimes that doesn't happen because in a building where 30 tenants live, 30 families, or say even 20, 30, 40 families, how are they all supposed to come on the same page? I mean, in any society building, like not everyone is on the same page or on anything. So that is.
I actually got the film Mohan Joshi Haziro in the context because I mean you place an argument or somebody the owner's argument that the rent, because of the Rent Control Act in 2021 we are getting a rent of around 300 rupees as an example, which is sort of limiting our capabilities of developing or redeveloping the building. But this film Mohan Joshi Haziro was made in 1984. Okay, 1984 mein that film was made, which basically is telling that there were things like these happening back in 1980s as well, right? It was happening back then we are 40 years after that, and the Rent Control Act hasn't changed, which basically means that the rent hasn't changed, right? So in 2021 people are still paying the same money, but now there are going to be so many buildings which are 40 years older than they are, and the rate is going to increase so much, the damage must have increased so much, there are more number of buildings that are going to fall every monsoon or every year. So I think it's an important question that I somehow feel
And that being said, it's very, very
focuses on.
important because most of these buildings are concrete buildings built at a time when reinforced concrete was new to Indian construction. So it wasn't also built with the best construction quality at the time. So all the more that these buildings have survived for so many years in itself is great but scary that what happens to people.
Actually, Tahir, so what we've found out, like when we've gone there, is everyone keeps saying that the actual, like earlier when these were built, like in 1900s, the quality was much better. It was much better than what it is now. We've seen the walls, like the original walls of these buildings are like this thick, and today whenever they build a wall, it's this thick. Like you can see the difference because we've seen parts of the buildings have been repaired over years and rebuilt. So we see these like that wall as thin as this, and then other parts which are still 100 years old have walls as thick as this. So there's that difference, and the wood that was used for staircases and for the lofts, this wood is still 100 years old. Like, it's that original wood that they used, and it's still not like the wood is in a great condition. It's just that things are falling here and there.
So natural materials always last a lot longer than modern materials, especially if natural materials are maintained well. And another thing that you pointed out, it is true that in India, the Indian standards have over the years relaxed, especially for cements. So cement's crushing strength has over the years become less and less, has still been approved as a safe structural strength. But yeah, but that being said, even if the materials were of a great quality, these buildings are now almost 100 years old, and some, if I understand, are over 100 years old and have had almost zero maintenance since at least the last 40 years.
But actually, I feel that somehow because of this heavy method of construction and materials, that is also what is bringing little complexity in the redevelopment. Because for the builders and the construction, like these people, it's basically more amount of material, right? To sort of break and also to make.
And if it's wood, it's a less easily available material as well. Sorry, Prateek.
Yeah.
That is actually right. It's stopping their redevelopment because since there is such a good amount of wood present in those buildings, many people are not willing to go for the redevelopment because they think that this wood the owner will take or the contractor will take and will sell it for like very good amount. So they just don't want redevelopment of those buildings to happen. Also, like the construction quality, they as Geetanjali mentioned, the walls were so thick. Now they know that the walls are not going to be that big, or so they are not willing to put effort or money in that sense to go let go into under redevelopment.
Largely, there is this disbelief in the entire redevelopment and reconstruction, and the disbelief of, if we are displaced from here, are we going to get our houses back? When are we going to get our houses back? And when we do, like, the building is not going to stay the same. The houses, definitely the quality is going to be lesser than what we had before, and this entire disbelief and concern about not having what we had for so long anymore, I think, like, if I could put it in a few words.
But then, like, counterintuitively, some of the clips that you all have filmed, that Prateek has filmed, show really, I don't know, I wouldn't. They may have been wonderful living spaces 40 years back, but the spaces that they're living in now, so it is I mean, to me, I'm not understanding really what is the restriction in redeveloping the building from the part owner's perspective. Maybe if you all could.
So
I think it's basically fear, isn't it, of losing this this bit of land in Bombay where there's so much pressure. This or dislocation is the most scary thing, I think, for a lot of people, basically. That they don't know. And this is where there is this lack of trust, between the authorities, between who will never, the system is so corrupt, the system is so bad that you're saying, there is no guarantee that I will ever get this piece of, even if it's the worst piece of land, I mean, the worst building, I'll never get this back. So apart from the sentimental attachment, there's also the actual fear of just losing
The asset.
life and livelihood, absolutely. And this is the trust deficit, which is I think, the root of the problem. That nowhere are you trying to build confidence and say, look, within 2 years you will be back, or whatever. It that is a major thing about town planning and city planning, is that there's huge, really the only word is trust deficit.
Yeah, I agree there, because the tenants don't even trust the contractor. If a contractor comes in for the repairs, for reconstruction, like one of the buildings has gone for reconstruction, one of them has been recently repaired. These are the same spaces that we were shooting in, and they don't even trust the contractor and the people working. They're like they're going to make a bad quality of it. Like it's not going to be the way it is. Basically, they're going to steal some of our wood. They're going to take these parts out and put in some low quality cement, low quality bars, and वैसा सब. And they're taking money, but who knows what they're putting in. All of this, like they don't even trust the contractor, and let alone like the no trust of the owner. And if it goes into redevelopment, they're also concerned that if they have a 2-room apartment or 400 square house, then they might not get the 400 square feet again once it's redeveloped. They might get 100 square feet or 200 square feet because they started out in that, and they might have bought the neighboring house, and maybe 2 houses in the neighboring in the same corridor. So now their house is 400 square feet, 500 square feet. But originally their tenancy started with that one house. So they're concerned that they're not going to get back those 4 rooms. Instead, they might just get back 1 room once it's rebuilt. So these are like actually very little concerns, but everyone has a very different concern. So we are not even able to generalize it. And we don't want to. Like every tenant has a different concern, and they have their own they're trying to negotiate it with each other and all of that.
So while you're in the process of researching or documenting for this film, has there been any successful negotiations between the full owner and the part owner? I mean, as a case study, we would like to. I mean, it's a good example per se because then it sort of lets you understand what was the kind of negotiation that happened. Was it in terms of money? I mean, area, money. What was the exact negotiation kind?
Yeah, so we were shooting in 3 buildings, right? Like we went to 3 buildings. So one of them right now is being demolished. So the entire building is going to come down and be rebuilt. So this is not redevelopment, okay? Redevelopment and reconstruction are 2 different terms now in this context, because reconstruction meaning it will just be built the same way as it was. Redevelopment always has extra FSI or different designs. The builder gets extra houses to sell and all of that. So it's being reconstructed. And so here what has happened is the owner is not putting in any money. All the tenants have decided that they're going to put in money from themselves. So all the money for reconstruction is coming from the tenants, and they've decided. Now this building has comparatively more well-to-do families, so it's easier for it. Yeah. So other buildings, we know that people, like I said, people can't afford to give 30,000, but here it's a little better for these families. And most of them do also have maybe another house in the same area or a little farther away where they can live for that period of time. So it's also about that. While it's being redevelopment, if the building goes into redevelopment, reconstruction, whatever it is, where do they go? If they have a relative's house, if they have another house, because sometimes we do have to like ek rent pe diya, one where we're staying. So we know that we have another space to live in here temporarily. But then again, many people don't have that. They just have this one house. Where are they going to go? And they don't want to go to transit camps. They don't want to be homeless, of course.
I think also given Bombay's distances, they don't want to even be relocated to some other part of the city temporarily because it's just so hard to get around.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to relocate, then you have to go to the other end of the city. So, I mean, that's why I think the hurdle also comes in.
Most of the transit camps that exist are in suburb, in Borivali or in those areas. And people will live all their life in South Bombay. It's like a village for them. It's like they still think that the robbery and murder kind of things happen there. I mean, it happens everywhere, but in their head it's like those are some different part of the world, and we don't want to go there. So transit camp is another issue, which because while the building is reconstructed, redeveloped or something. first they don't know how many years they're going to be going for. 2
Transit
years, 3
camp.
years. And transit camps are, the state of the transit camp is also such that, they don't want to go there. And many people have some doubts about the transit camp. Some of them have not even gone and seen how they look like. They only just heard about those. And the major thing is that they are so far that nobody is willing to travel that much, because all of their jobs are right now in South Bombay. Nobody's gonna leave their job and go to the Borivali or some suburb area. The transit camps are another major problem. There is only one transit camp in Kolaba that, as we know right now. And of course, it can't accommodate all the problem that people are going through right now. So only one solution that we all, while discussion that came up with people is the cluster development. Now you take all the buildings of those area, you demolish them, you give it to some big builder. Now we don't know how good that is a solution, how feasible that solution is, but that one solution that came across was like, and you redevelop the whole area. Right now this is happening, I guess, in Bhiwandi area, where DLF is given, or some big bill, I'm not sure, for the whole area reconstruction. That's one solution that we have come across.
But while actually, I mean, recently we were discussing with the context of the film, do you think that this issue is more, I mean, it needs a policy oriented solution? Like,
So
like, what do you think, Prateek?
What you've explained, Prateek, is very much an infrastructure, an infrastructure-led development. But could we think maybe, or are there examples where there has been, rather than infrastructure-focused development, a policy-focused way forward?
The thing is that infrastructure eventually can, I mean, that's what also is happening with multiple housing societies in Mumbai, is that these buildings are getting stuck in the process because of the policy. And eventually the owner loses the asset of land. And eventually he or she has to go live somewhere, lose his 50 lakhs, a crore, or whatever the amount is. So it's a loophole, or rather, like, I mean, it's a hurdle in the policy. Infrastructure just happens through, right? So do you think that there needs to be some sort of pretext to the idea of infrastructure?
Yeah, definitely. Like I've been looking at it through the lens of policy, and since I think since 3 years they've been saying that, like whenever I mean, since I've also worked as a journalist, so when you talk to these officials and ask about, they just keep saying, yeah, we're working on a new policy, but that's not come out yet. Like, and even if it does, it is again going to cater to some of the stakeholders, say for example builders, or owners only, or not everyone is going to be happy. I have a feeling, you can't make everyone happy with one policy, right? I mean, it's a very, like, there has to be a lot of structural changes. I mean, for one, in Mumbai, development just means infrastructure, like just roads, just buildings, skyscrapers. So that outlook also has to change somewhere. And like Bina ma'am was also saying, it's also about what home means to someone. I mean, when the state starts looking at it like that, along with just a house, what do people want? Do they want amenities nearby, open spaces nearby, accessibility to their livelihood? Like all of this, they're not considering all of this, right? I mean, they're just considering like a building and how to make profit off of that building, and how to, like, the entire idea of development again, like that's where we go. And I think yeah, sorry, I was just adding that earlier the critique of the policy was that like even if people were going to the MHADA for redevelopment, like even when owners went, the process of getting the NOC was too long. So it would go years before they got an NOC, and then the building is basically deteriorating more. It's getting more dilapidated, and now then the cost increases of the repairs. So it's that loop, like it's the process is just never ending. and meanwhile, the building is just getting older.
Has there any revision been in from like since Mahar era has come into like activities in some time now?
Not in
Not really with this context.
No, not in this context.
All right.
Yeah, dilapidated buildings. That's the reason, I guess, why we are so involved with this issue now, because
Right.
we ourselves don't see anything happening on ground,
Right.
and we are just trying to capture that, like this issue of housing is just like ignored and basically just talked about when a building collapses, and
Right.
and then everyone forgets.
No, and in that context, I think it's really important also then that this film, which is now in the public domain, and hopefully your larger feature that y'all are gonna do, gets made and gets out, so that more people like me who had no idea about the intricacies and the hurdles that go in to a redevelopment of such structures, can at least know the context behind the housing issues. I think we don't have any questions from the audience, so but if anybody has, you can just quickly leave them in the chat. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Geetanjali, Prateek, Bina, for this. It was really
Thank you so much.
We learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good session.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.